Hello, we are past Halloween. We're now into November. Hard to believe, almost. Time has been strange. I'm only going to be in the UK for like a short time. Uh, and let's see. So, Halloween was new moon vibes. I worked earlier in the day, which meant that I was like more central for the evening. So I went to a talk at the Whitechapel Gallery, and it was really nice. It was with Dan Hancock's and Adam Moore, and they were discussing crowds and how historically there was this idea that crowds were just sort of like being in a crowd would turn people into this sort of vicious, senseless beings, parts of the mass, and that you needed to sort of control a crowd through individual leaders. And so this idea was brought up by Gustave Le Bon, who was great friends with like Mussolini and, dictators. So we talked about that. We talked about that sort of pervasive idea of a crowd as a negative thing that needs to be controlled. And of course, that's not necessarily inherent to crowds. And so Dan Hancock was talking about his new book that I haven't read, but something about multitudes. And I don't fully know the contents of the book, but he alluded to it being more focusing on the positive side of crowds. And I think a lot of it talks about resistance movements, like protests, as well as the wonderful joy of being in celebration with a large crowd of people, going to music festivals or other kinds of festivals. And I think all of that is very valid and helpful to keep in mind. I think that the interesting thing about crowds, I mean, it's full of a whole bunch of people, right? But if you have a unity of consciousness, a unity of thought, unity of feeling, then that can really intensify whatever that unity is all about. So, I mean, this is sort of in a way, concept of solidarity, right? If everyone is unified, then it's more powerful. So those are the ideas that were coming up Halloween. I didn't dress up. I was just sort of present for the spooky vibes. And walking through London, that is abundant, especially walking along the Thames and, knowing that that's sort of Jack the Ripper territory and all of the old buildings. And it was kind of that like misty evening sort of vibe. Definitely not a sunny day. And yeah, it definitely had its own sort of spooky charm about it, which is like when I was younger, I remember getting kind of upset about the commercialization of Halloween and how all the decorations were just cheap plastic crap. And I wanted things to be spooky and I wanted to get into that feeling, but I wanted it to be done in a more, what I thought was a sophisticated, elegant kind of way of, having things just be sort of black and iron and the lighting and smokiness and all of that kind of aesthetic quality without it being like brightly colored plastic. and now I've gotten to experience that sort of like, there I didn't really see a whole lot of Halloween decorations. Of course, I did see some, but really not very much. I think there was like one house I passed by that maybe like a day or two before Halloween, that had this whole like setup outside, and it was the only place on the street, and it was just like they had made like zombies on the front lawn, and with like caution tape everywhere, and spiders and skeletons, and like there wasn't an inch of space that was devoid of Halloween decoration. So that was entertaining to see. But it was just that one house. And I think, I saw the occasional jack-o'-lantern. But again, it was very occasional, like maybe one on a street. And yeah, it was, but it had that spooky quality to it. Um, so it was a bit of an interesting Halloween. And then last night, yesterday, was bonfire night. So that's the whole V for Vendetta. They found all the fireworks under Parliament, and because they found it, then Parliament wasn't blown up, or it might not have been Parliament. To be honest, I'm not an historian, but there was some sort of threat to the empire that was discovered before it could be unleashed, and so now the celebration is to let off a bunch of fireworks. And there were lots of fireworks that happened on the weekend. So I guess the sort of like last weekend was kind of combined Halloween and bonfire night. So there were a lot of fireworks everywhere and people going to parties and things. I worked all weekend and didn't really feel like going out. So I didn't, but I did kind of feel like I wanted to have some sort of way of marking the occasion and experiencing bonfire night. And I remembered 2 years ago when I was here, and it was my first bonfire night. Now, granted, I think it probably would have been more spectacular to be in the presence of a massive bonfire. I actually have had that experience in my life before, but it wasn't specifically, at least I don't think it was for bonfire night. It might have been. I don't really remember the circumstances. I think it was fall, but I remember going to my friend's house, or my friend's, like, mom's boyfriend's place, who, like, he had a lot of land, and I think they had just been, collecting all of the dead wood or wood from trees that they were needing to clear, and they had a bonfire that was like the size of a room. I had never seen a fire that big before, and it was really cool. I thought it was like, I need to do this every year. Of course, that was the only time that I've experienced that. But I've heard that similar bonfires happen throughout England on the 5th, which was yesterday. But also on the weekend around the 5th. So last weekend there were fireworks at Alexandra Palace, which I didn't go to. There were fireworks at Battersea Park, probably throughout the city. And yeah, I was working, so I didn't get to go. But I did find that there was a place in Bloomsbury that was letting off fireworks last night. And I didn't think I was going to make it because I had to work. But my double shift turned into just a regular shift, and I ended up leaving early because there just wasn't that many bookings. So I found myself kind of not too far and suddenly free when I thought I would be working. So I made my way over to Bloomsbury and watched the fireworks. Got sort of jammed in the middle of the crowd, and it was nice. I mean, I think if we're just isolating looking at a fireworks display, it was fireworks. It was You know, I lived in Montreal for long enough that the fireworks themselves were not that impressive. They were like there were some fun elements. Like there were a few that had like multiple things and some swirly ones and some fun like glittery bits. But I think what was really nice was just being in the crowd and seeing and hearing reactions from people. Like there were a few really like big booms, and the crowd was like, "Oh wow!" like cheering, and so that was kind of cute, especially because there were a lot of kids because the event last night had like a fun fair kind of thing, so games and rides for children. So there were a lot of kids there, a lot of families, and yeah, it was cute. And I remember like just at the end when the fireworks ended, looking over into the crowd and seeing this couple that were just so clearly in love with one another and just having the most beautiful moment. And it was just really nice to witness. I was like listening to music on my headphones while watching the fireworks, and yeah, it was nice. And then I felt like I had experienced my bonfire night experience and went home, made some dinner, had a chill night. But yeah, so bonfire night 2 years ago was just such a magical experience because it wasn't on a Tuesday, it was on a Saturday. And so it was like, I think I was peripherally aware of it, but I really had no idea what bonfire night was like in London. And because it was a Saturday, and because there were so many fireworks going off that were in central London, but also away from central London, I remember just sort of running through Soho, going from bar to bar, and every time we were outside of the bar, there were just so many fireworks being let off. It was like constant throughout the whole night. So, drink a little bit, go outside, see the fireworks, go to another place, maybe have some dinner, go outside, see the fireworks. And I remember it feeling really magical, especially because I was getting to know someone who's from Ireland, and there's only been a handful of people in my life that I've met who are actually like, born and raised in Ireland. And I can't quite describe it, but there's always such a magical feeling. There's a sense of knowing, of belonging, of connection that I don't often feel in life. Like, I mean, I connect with a lot of people, but it's on a different level. And I think part of that is because I have Irish ancestry. But I think a lot of that is also just the culture and how the ways in which Irish people connect is very different from the way a lot of other people connect or don't. So it was just there was stimulating conversation because she was like working on some really fascinating, intense things, and I remember there was like a Soho, I think it's like comedy bar or like a theater, but it has like just its own bar, and so we were just there and hanging out. It was really nice. So this year was less of like a spectacle because it was sort of the the dregs of the celebrations, but it was still really nice and kind of was a nice way of punctuating the season, because I felt once I saw those fireworks and saw how cozy people were getting with one another, all the lights, and it made it feel like Halloween season is over and now we're into, Yuletide. It felt like a turning of the season. So that was a neat sort of transit way passage. And today I had the day off, so I've just been not really doing too much. I've been working on my book, and just doing the sort of maintenance life, getting groceries. I might work out for a bit. Um, so Monday, I had Monday off work as well. And I decided to, I wanted to like sort of leave the house, have a little bit of an adventure because the sun started to shine and I wanted to be in it. So also I had been feeling kind of, I had sort of done some emotional self-torture, going down pathways that I know will bring me pain, but for some reason I just wanted to feel it. So I did that to myself, and then I needed to needed to feel better. So so I thought I'd go for a cycle, and I thought that it would be nice to go to Highgate Cemetery and see Karl Marx's tomb. Now, I had wanted to do that maybe a year ago when I finished my first round of exams, and I wanted to go there and celebrate by like smoking a joint at Karl Marx's tomb. I thought that would be really like iconic. And and then it wasn't that far from school, so I just walked there. And when I got there, it was dark, and the gates had been closed, and I didn't really know if it was possible or how it would be possible to get in. So we just didn't, and we went to a restaurant instead. But from that experience, I was like, okay, I have to do this during the day. Otherwise, they will close the gates. And it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, so I went out cycling. It took me probably about 45 minutes to get there, more or less. And when I got there, I was in for a surprise because I didn't realize that they would charge you to enter into a cemetery. That just seems so wrong on many levels. But I had cycled there, and it was like, kind of an effort to get there. So I didn't want to just like go home. So I just like paid the entrance fee and went in, and I was a bit begrudging of that. It wasn't a lot, but it was too much, I think. I don't think you should be charged at all. But I went in and I walked around for a little bit. It was really like, I felt like there was a lot of energy in that cemetery, especially when, like, I was so surprised when I stepped off the pavement and went on to a dirt path. Like, the intensity of feeling that I felt through my feet was just like wild. I'm not sure what I was detecting, but it was strong. And yeah, so I was just sort of feeling that for a while. And when I went to Karl Marx's tomb, someone was there and asked me if I wanted to have my picture taken, and I was like, well, I can take it myself, but I accepted the offer, and then I ended up just like hanging out with them, and we talked about a lot of things. But he just finished his master's in law, in land law, so that was really interesting, and was here for the same amount of time as me, on a visa. And so we talked a lot about that kind of dynamic, and we're both working in restaurants, and it's it's all right for now, it's temporary, but it's not really what we're planning on doing with our lives, kind of thing. So yeah, we connected a lot. We started talking about poetry. We started like sharing, we had a lot of cultural sharing, because he's from Pakistan, and I don't really know much or anything about Pakistan. Yeah, we had a nice chat, nice hangout. So I went into the cemetery having kind of like feeling a bit begrudged about the fact that I had to pay. And then I made a friend, I made a comrade, and and we both were laughing at the ridiculousness of going to visit Karl Marx's tomb. You know, the sort of like the the guy who is held up as like, you know, champion of the working class, and we have to pay money to visit his tomb, and his likeness, his tomb, the image of his tomb is on the ticket. And I just really don't think that he would be okay with that. I feel like that's a level of exploitation that, of course, would be here of all places in London. But it was an interesting day, and I went back home and had some really nice conversations with my housemates. So, yeah, all in all, it's been an interesting week. And to cap it all off, the US election was last night, and so Trump is president again. And it's 2016 all over, you know? It feels like there was a failure to learn from the last cycle. And so now this one will probably be more intense, more difficult, until people learn. Because that seems to be how life goes. So this morning I was thinking a lot about that time in 2016 and the song that I wrote to sort of get me through that and to get me fired up for a big resistance, which is actually on like my Instagram channel, or profile. Someday I would like to actually properly record it with a band, because I think it's a really good song, but it needs to be arranged and performed appropriately. But yeah, it's a good protest song, and I did sing it at the Palestinian cycle in the summer, which was really cool. It was very cool to be able to like sing a song, a protest song that I had written at a protest, you know? And I hope that that's not the only time that happens. It would be nice to continuously use this. Anytime that resistance movements need a little extra oomph, you know? I would be honored to have my song be a part of that. Anyways, crowds, changing of seasons, elections, political resistance. Yeah, that's been a lot of the themes coming up. And I feel like there's also been like there's been weird energy. Don't know how else to explain it. I hope all the weird energy has passed through your lives in a way that was fruitful. And we'll check in again soon. We'll see what happens.